and good afternoon, and welcome back to the Over 40s Fitness Podcast. My name is Tristan Lowe. We're just into the third week in March 2024, and today we're going to be talking about the core. All right, now everyone instinctively thinks, oh, it's my belly, abdominal region, gut area, something like that, somewhere down at the front of our midriff. Well, there's more to the core than just that. Let's talk about it. All right, I'm just going to read a paragraph from my study book and take from it what you will. In the last 10 years, core training, or more specifically, core stability training, has become extremely popular, both in the mainstream gym and sports training environments. The development of a strong and stable core is championed by many as key to the improved or pain-free function and sporting excellence. However, there are a number of areas that must be considered in gaining a complete and well-balanced understanding of this controversial and often misunderstood area. Again, just to reiterate, it's often that I see, hear or read about core training and it's just someone doing sit-ups. It's way more than that. The structures that make up the core, the function of the core, how to activate our core, what equipment is commonly used in core training, and what exercises should we prescribe as part of a core training program. Let's look at the structure of the core. Okay, simply, if you took your head, arms and legs off, I'm not saying you should do that, but if somehow you could, what remains, as in the trunk of your body, is the core. Let's say from the collarbone or the clavicle, all the way down to the pelvic region, the pelvic bone, and all the way around the anterior and the posterior, the front and the back of our bodies, the core, from the collarbone to the pelvis. In other words, again, everything, head, arms and legs off, those extremities, those limbs, take them away. What you've got left is your core. All right. Often the core is considered to include only the abdominal and lower back muscles. This is too narrow of a view, since when discussing the core muscles, that the powerful hip and upper back muscles should not be overlooked. To truly appreciate the structures involved in the core, let's think of the body being made up of a series of muscle layers: deep, inner, a deep, middle and outer. Deep muscle layer. Movements of the spine and extremities can be divided into two categories: physiological and accessory movements. Gross physiological movements are responsible for large motions of the body and allow for many functional tasks such as bending, lifting. In contrast, accessory muscles are responsible for controlling movements that occur within a joint. An example would be when bending to pick up an object from the floor, the spine moves into a flexed position. But there is also accessory movement at each vertebral segment. Each segment depending on the task, will bend, slide or shear or rotate at the top of each other. To control all accessory motions, there are small position sense muscles that come across one vertebral segment to another. Now I'm going to show you a diagram, a very brief diagram that was that I looked at when I studied the core back in 2008. I'm going to hold it up to the camera. There, and there you see it there. So essentially what they're saying is the core has got a multitude of functions. An example, if a golfer stands and addresses the ball ready to tee off or hit a fairway shot, he stands over the ball, or she stands over the ball, and they address the position waiting to take that shot. They're going to flex forward at the spine, you know, as much as from 20 to sort of 40 degrees or even more depending on the shot itself. So they're going to flex the spine, and then what's going to happen is they're going to go from a stationary position where the spine is flexed, and then they're going to rotate as well. So if you imagine standing side on to a golfer as they take that shot, you're stood behind them on the fairway watching, you'll see him tip over at the hips and then he rotates at the hips to take the shot. So the core is under two forces, planes of movement for duress. Okay, so there's flexion of the spine and then there's a rotation of the spine as well, which is why a lot of golfers end up with lower back pain. Ordinarily you'd say it's because they play too much golf, but personally what I found as a golfer and as a trainer and a therapist, it's because they don't actually strengthen their body in preparation to play the sport. They only play golf to keep healthy and fit, which ordinarily is a good thing to do. Most golfers stop playing golf not because of the cost of it, because you can always go to a cheaper course or pay get some discounts depending on where you go. Most golfers stop playing golf because they get injured, and ordinarily it's spinal from the neck right down to the base of the spine, or possibly even the hips. But Okay, and what they've not done is strengthen their core. Yeah, okay, their abdominal region, the pelvic region, the back, the hips. They've not done that to continue playing. All right, now, as a personal trainer, when I take a new client, a beginner, let's say it's week 1, and they come in, they've had their consultation and assessment, I can actually prescribe to them some core exercises, and 9 times out of 10, it's always standing up first. If the client shows poor range of movement, flexibility and mobility in the midsection or the core, and they can't rotate properly, just even bodyweight exercises, let alone using resistance bands, kettlebells, dumbbells or TRX, and what happens is then I'll think, okay, they possibly there's a possibility of back pain or back injury if we spend a lot of time on the floor doing sit-ups, you know, and tightening of the hip flexors, which ordinarily can lead to, you know, a forward bending of the hips or like an anterior pelvic tilt. So I would give the client, at least in the first 3 to 4 weeks, most of their core training standing up. Yes, there's going to be 1 or 2 exercises on the floor, maybe a forearm plank where the spine is nice and straight. Quickest way from A to B is a straight line. Your spine is at its strongest ordinarily when it's straight, whether you're standing up or on your forearms in a plank position. So we may give them exercises to create that deep sort of abdominal, intra-abdominal pressure where they brace their entire body and go into some form of static contraction, which helps to actually strengthen the entire body really, but it's looked at really quite often as a core exercise. But ordinarily, I'd give them a standing exercise with feet hip width apart or in a walking stance, yeah, and put some slight rotation into it, some slight lateral tilts as well, and of course some isometrics. So a squat, a bodyweight squat is a very good core exercise, and the reason being, it doesn't require any machinery or equipment, and also it can mimic our daily functions. We squat down in the house to pick something up, and we stand up to get off the chair or off the sofa. You know, we squat down, parents will squat down to pick up young children or to take the lead off their dog or something like that, you know, and they'll stand back up again. What goes up must come down and vice versa. We get off the chair after watching television or having dinner. You know, you can't just magically float yourself around the house. So squatting up and down, whether it be to 45-degree or 90-degree squat or further than that, depending on, you know, the flexibility available at the hips and the ankle joints, it's a good exercise as long as your joints can take it. And I would say a bodyweight squat is far superior to doing hundreds, if not thousands, of abdominal crunches. Again, unless you're a high quality athlete, that ordinarily leads to boredom or, in more cases, injury of the neck or the lower back. Now, the core, again, is made up of a multitude of muscles, okay, and those muscles will rotate, tilt, flex and extend, and therefore it's also important to train your core with rotational work. Yeah, just rotating around, you know, it's good for a golfer, it's also good for someone new to exercise. All right, let's go back to my study books and let's just look at a section here. Now, this one here, I'm going to look at the middle layer or the inner unit of the core. Middle layer muscles include the transverse abdominis or the TVA, internal obliques, lumbar multifidus, the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. When these muscles contract, they create a non-compressible cylinder where the spine is stabilized and forms the working foundation from which the arms and legs can function optimally. Now, when we talk about pelvic floor, that's a phrase we often hear women, men as well, but often women who do Pilates or yoga or some form of what they think is holistic exercise. They talk about the pelvic floor. Often women that are post-childbirth, have got a weak pelvic floor and it takes some time to build their strength back up again, and that's not always because they've had a cesarean. That could be natural childbirth in a normal physiological way, and the pelvic floor becomes weak. The lower abdominal, mid-abdominal muscles, they weaken through childbirth, and it's quite important actually. I think pelvic floor exercises can sometimes be prescribed at the hospital, but my advice is, if you're a woman watching, or your husband and you're explaining to your wife that she should take some pelvic floor exercises, my advice to you, if that's you, then make sure you get those exercises prescribed from someone who actually works in a physical healthcare or a trainer or a physical therapist. Don't just get them from a nurse who's looked at a book. Yeah, always take your information for health and fitness from someone who actually participates it, and not just someone who's seen something on television or read a book. Because they can't actually explain to you from a physical sense, they may as well pass you the book that they've read from. All right, so my advice there is at least 6. Some people say, I've heard about women having children, then 2 weeks later going into core exercises, pelvic floor exercises. Well, ordinarily they may have come from an exercise background before having children. But otherwise, anything up to 6 weeks, you have to consult your physician for that. All right, next thing. Let's look at the outer muscle layers of the core unit, or the outer unit. Outer layer muscles include the rectus abdominis, external obliques, erector spinae, latissimus dorsi, the gluteals, and the adductors. The gluteals and the adductors, which form muscle slings. These muscle slings contribute to the ability to maintain an optimal working relationship between joints and to integrate the various body segments for successful motion. So I'm going to hold my book up to the camera here, and you're going to see the diaphragm, the TVA, or the transverse obliques, the multifidus, and the pelvic floor. And you can see right there. All right, now let's look at defining core function. And that's from Elphinstone and Pook, excuse me, I think I'm butchering their names, and an article written in 1998. They define the functional role of the core as the ability of your trunk to support the effort and forces from your arms and legs, so that muscles and joints can perform in their safest, strongest, and most effective positions. The core, or trunk, can be thought of as a crossroads of the body, providing a link between the upper and the lower body. With this in mind, the main focus of core training is to address any functional deficit in our trunk or core stabilizers, in order to provide the necessary spinal support and a strong and adaptable platform for the actions of our extremities. All right, okay, so the next time you talk about, or you meet someone, or you're with your friend or colleague or that talks about core training, ask them what they've done. Ordinarily, there's going to be 1 or 2 exercises, sit-ups and maybe a plank. And as you know now, possibly the best way to train your core is standing up. Yeah. And of course, to some degree, floor-based. And remember to put some forward movement, lateral movement, tilts and rotations into your core exercise. Try and work at it slowly to start with. When you're doing core training, it's not necessarily about muscle gain and fat loss or weight loss. It's about strengthening the stable part of your body, strengthening everything that sits around the spine. All right, so core training, great thing to do. The world's greatest athletes are core training every day, or 5-6 days a week, right across to people that are new to health clubs and new to gyms and new exercise. So I would say to you, 9 times out of 10, incorporate a specific core strengthening exercise into most of your home workouts or your gym workouts. Or if you take on a personal trainer, ask him or ask her about the core, and hopefully they should know enough and make it also necessary for yourself. It should be something that's not just given to every single client. You could give one client one core exercise, and it's not guaranteed that should be applicable to your next client. So vary it and ask why you're doing it. Ask your trainer why you're doing certain core exercises and what the benefits are. And they should know. If they don't, work together. Look in books, read magazines, read newspapers, read magazines, and get some ideas. But ordinarily, a trainer that's had at least 6 months of working as a professional will be able to give you some very good core exercises, and ideally start with body weight exercises and then move on to suspension training or medicine balls or resistance bands or BOSUs or Swiss balls, and of course free weights as well. All right, my name's Tristan Lowe, and it's the podcast for the Over 40s Fitness Podcast with Tristan Lowe. And please like, subscribe and share. Catch us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts and Google. Until the next time, thanks for watching and listening.